Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Diana Rowan, and she's here today to share with us her new book, The Bright Way: 5 Steps to Freeing the Creative Within You. Now, Diana is a professional harpist, and she's performed on 6 continents. She founded the Bright Knowledge Guild so that she can teach in the digital environment and offers her students around the world access to her systems through ongoing membership programs, social media communities, and videos. So let's welcome to the show, Diana Rowan.
Thank you, Marianne.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about your new book. I gotta ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, it was interesting how it came about. I actually have a program where I teach people how to be more creative in their life every day, just regular everyday life. It doesn't have to be doing anything spectacular because I actually believe everybody's creative at all times. And it turned out one of the people in my program is a publisher. And she said, have you considered writing a book about this? And I said, yeah, that sounds great. Why not I go ahead and do that? And then the next year and a half, my whole life became about writing a book because it's actually a massive endeavor. So I got to basically practice what I preach in many ways, because I got to be creative in a whole new way.
So, who is your book and that program intended for?
The book is actually intended for anybody who wants to feel more connected to their creativity again. The way that I see creativity is that it is direct engagement with life. As soon as you engage with whatever you're doing, it could even be an everyday activity like cooking. It could be a conversation like what we're having. As soon as you engage directly, you put your mark on that thing and you change that thing forever, and you get that connection that is creativity. So I feel like creativity has kind of been sidetracked into just musicians and painters. I'm a musician myself, so I hear this attitude a lot from others. They will say to me things like, oh, you're so creative, you play the harp. And I'm like, yeah, but you're creative too. And so the book is geared towards anyone who wants to feel more engaged in their creativity. And for me, that's so important because I do believe that everybody is creative. You're born creative, and that when you engage in your creativity, you feel fulfilled. And that is perhaps the biggest message that I have of all.
Do you ever have people who are interested in your program, but they're like, gosh, I'm not even sure what I'm creative with?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. They're always pleasantly surprised. I don't mind that they come in with that attitude because that's what society tells us. It tells us that, creativity is only for the chosen few, and only if you're professional are you like a real legitimate creative. So yeah, I think they get a lot of messaging around that, and no wonder they feel that way. So I surely don't blame them. And they're always pleasantly surprised, as I say, because your creativity is within you. So, it'll just take a little bit of coaching and assistance to remind you how to reconnect with that and to lay aside a lot of the ideas that society may have planted that you're not creative.
Mm-hmm. When you initially created The Bright Way, how did you come to that format? And when you made it, was it out of a pure inspiration of something that happened?
Wow, it was really actually a very, very long journey, and I talk about it in the book. I started music when I was 8 years old, and right away I realized I wanted to become a professional musician, in that I wanted to dedicate my life to it. And so I began practicing like crazy. I loved playing. It was so wonderful. And then I began to be more aware of outside expectations and requirements. And I actually developed an outrageous condition of performance anxiety, and I would throw up before performances. I would cry, and it was a complete fiasco for me because I had intended that this would be my life work, would be my music. And yet I had this horrendous condition, and it lasted for years and years. Nonetheless, I kept playing music and advancing, and I became a very advanced pianist. But finally, in college as a music major, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I felt like I'm going to have an extremely short life at this point. I am so miserable. And I gave up music completely. Um, but I missed it terribly. And during that time of giving it up, I worked a lot in social welfare situations, public health situations, battered women's shelters, halfway houses, free health clinics. And I encountered many people, who had hit rock bottom. And somehow always it would come out that I played piano, and I would show people little things on the piano. And because usually there was some junky old piano hanging around somewhere, that we could bang on. And I would see this light come on in them and this type of strength that was in them, even though they had hit rock bottom. And they started reminding me of what creativity is really about. It's really about coming back to your true self and tapping into your core strength. It is a great connector, is your creativity. So slowly, they gave me the courage to start taking lessons myself again. And I took lessons with a very sympathetic teacher, diving into many spiritual paths, going to a therapist for years, trying beta blockers, anything that you can imagine to get past this performance anxiety. I tried it. And eventually I went back and got a master's degree in classical piano performance and a PhD in harp. And on that journey, and it took a long time, I came to realize it was really only a few core principles that need to be adhered to that will return you to your creativity. You don't have to spend this, decades long trek that I took. In fact, we are naturally creative. It's not supposed to be a struggle. And by reconnecting to yourself, to your purpose, which everybody has one, and step one in the book is your purpose, discovering your purpose, which is already there. By taking the 5 steps that the book talks about, you can absolutely regain all your creative strength again, regardless of what you're doing. I mean, performance anxiety is, one of the most dramatic manifestations of anxiety around creativity or creative block. But it's really the same story for everybody. We are all creative inherently. And I feel like I've never been proved wrong.
Well, I love that. And thank you for sharing your story with us. I mean, how often do people go through these experiences where something blocks their creativity? I mean, you talk about the anxiety. We get other people, I know artists personally who have said, my work isn't good enough. You get all these different things that happen that seem to block people moving forward.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. One of the questions I've been getting during my interviews about the book is, how did you deal with creative block while you were writing the book? And I was like, I did not get creative block. I don't think creative block has to be a natural thing. I think it's a very normal thing in our culture. Absolutely. It's normal, just like performance anxiety is normal. In fact, I believe they're having the same root. The root is not being connected to your purpose, first and foremost. And the second is not really having a community around you that is supportive of your creativity. Instead, you may have a community around you that indulges in judgment instead. And so judgment is when we say things are good and bad and these kind of blanket statements. I prefer to talk about discernment. We ask, is something working or is it not? It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing conversation. If something's working, great. And let's find out why. Because what is working is part of your style. It's your learning style. It's your artistic voice. And you want to cultivate that. You want to know what that is. And just the same, if something isn't working, we want to find out why. Okay, why isn't this working? And there are tools that I offer in the book about how to work through that. When we come from a place of discernment rather than judgment, I feel we get way better results. And it's not taking the easy road. It's not just saying, oh yeah, anything goes. We're not going to improve. We're not going to progress. No, I think we'll actually progress more if we can lay aside judgment, and that judgment oftentimes has been learned through community. So again, we want supportive community, but we even internalize that judgment, unfortunately, and we criticize ourselves with negative self-talk. So it's one of those, as above, so below. Inside and outside is the same. We want to have a situation where there's just beautiful discernment rather than judgment on all sides.
Yeah, without a doubt. And what a beautiful place that will be to be in. And
I know.
but you just, yeah. And, it's interesting because a lot of people don't have to take the journey you took. I mean, during your journey, you've learned a lot. You've have some great education that's backing the work that you do, but it was a journey as well. And so I love how the book kind of condenses it for people so they don't have to spend that time doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I really do feel it's natural for us to be creative. You don't need to go through 1,000 hoops and contortions for this to happen. I think just, a confluence of sometimes the way we've been, schooled and the way that we value certain things has divorced people from their creativity. And so it did take me a gargantuan effort to reconnect to my creativity. But when I did, it made me realize, oh, wait a minute, this is actually a very natural thing to happen. And it's actually quite simple.
Now, the 5 steps in your book are connected to the 5 elements. I'd love for you to explain to our listeners how that connects and how they work together.
Yeah. So the book works in 2 cycles. The first cycle is the 5 steps, and the 5 steps are sequential. You follow them one by one. So you walk them in a path, and then once you've reached step 5, you actually loop around to step 1 again. So it's very much like the cycles of nature. Our very first step is define your purpose. And your purpose, as I mentioned, is already inside you. And so I walk people through how to connect to their purpose and really reconnect to their purpose because it's already in you. Second step is to then set your intentions from your purpose. So when we set intentions, those are similar to goals, but much more broad in scope because they talk about the process rather than just an end product that we obsess about, like looking at the very top of the mountain and there's my goal. Oh my goodness, I'm demoralized already. When you set an intention, it's much more of a journey and a process. So that's what step 2 goes deeply into. Step 3 is your practicum plan. So that's where you get nuts and bolts. How do I actually make these intentions real? How do I set my schedule? How do I manage my energy levels? It's very practical. And then the 4th step is integration. And that's where you try everything on for size and find out through discernment, is something working or not? And take action both ways. Final step is fulfillment. And this is where you celebrate everything you've done. You really feel proud of your achievements. And it doesn't matter if the achievements would be remarkable to someone else or not. They are remarkable to you. And that's all that counts. And by taking this step, which by the way, people tend to avoid that step because they think, oh, I'll become arrogant, or, oh, it's not that big of a deal, celebrating my fulfillment. It really is a huge deal because it fills you up with confidence and inspiration. And these are what translate into ongoing motivation and also resilience. And we all know that we need resilience, especially as we're speaking right now. And if you have stoked up your resilience through your creativity, you are in a position to handle things in a far easier way, honestly. You're able to cope, you're able to be there for others at the same time. So in fulfilling yourself, you actually benefit everyone. It's not being arrogant. And so then you turn around and you look at your purpose again. So through new eyes. So the inner wheel is the five essential elements, and those are directly connected to the natural elements. The essential elements of daily practice happen all the time, and they are connected to earth, air, fire, and water, because just as with nature, having cycles, nature has these elements. And if one element is missing, nature goes out of balance. And the essential elements in the Bright Way are artistry, learning, community, inspiration, and technique. And we do need all of those on a daily basis. They don't have to be, you know, exact proportions at all times, but they have to be tapped into on a regular basis. And if one is missing, for example, inspiration is missing, our whole creativity can start to feel a bit flat. So by keeping the essential elements alive, just like with nature, we keep our creative ecosystem alive.
Oh, how important is that? My goodness. And I love how you have it all interwoven together. And what's interesting is you also, I know you talk about alchemy, and I'd love for you to share how that's featured in your book.
So I'm always really interested in timeless practices, things that we can all agree upon across time and space. So when I look at nature, we can agree that nature exists. Regardless of what backgrounds we may have or experiences we have, we know nature is a real thing. So we can call on nature as a template for creativity that we can rely upon. Alchemy is a philosophy that has been around for thousands of years at this point and across many, many cultures. And again, regardless of your background or your beliefs, you can tap into the power of alchemy. Alchemy is a philosophy that encompasses 7 operations, they're called, and these operations lead us from a place of, we might say, lead into gold. So what does that mean? Lead is when we're more heavy, we're more involved in toxic things. Gold is light and bright and strong. And so we are going on a personal transformation from lead into gold when we use the principles of alchemy. And they are universal, these principles, moving us from the first stage of calcination, which is the burning away of anything extraneous, and ending in what's called coagulation, which is the coming together of all parts of yourself so that you become whole again. So I love alchemy as a process of self-realization that is deeply tapped into the human experience across time and space.
Now, you mentioned purpose when we initially talked, and a lot of times people seem to be a little stuck. And you say everyone has purpose. I've heard many times where people go, I don't even know what my purpose in life is. How do they define that?
Yes. So I do believe that we're born with our purpose. And so in the book, I take people through a process of tapping into childhood memories, of becoming lost in something that they loved doing, and those feelings that came up when they were doing that thing. That always holds the nuggets of what their actual purpose is, believe it or not. Even in childhood, we have this. So, for example, in my case, when I remembered what I felt like when I played music as a child, I felt like I was connected to this golden space. I felt like I was connected to this timeless space. I felt it was extremely real, and I felt connected to everyone and everything. That feeling I know now as an adult is me coming back to my true self, coming back to my true core essence, connecting to my soul, you might say. And so that is my purpose. When I am creative, I come back to my true self. And in doing so, I hope to encourage others to do the same. So with that as a purpose, that defines everything I do. That defined writing the book. So when I wrote the book, each time I would sit down to write, I would reconnect to that core self. And I would feel, am I connected to myself? Am I really, really here in all honesty, all authenticity? and I would start writing. And, from what I'm hearing from my readers, I'm so grateful for, um, there's a lot of visceral experiences, and crying and direct response to everything I'm saying. And that's because I feel we're connecting on a soul level together. And it's because I wrote that way. Believe me, there were many, many, many drafts. And the drafts were that got discarded were when I was not connected to my purpose. And I was writing more from like a theoretical point of view, or, not connected on that soul level. And it's exactly the same when I'm teaching. I come and connect to my true self, and then I encounter the student full on. And then I really can perceive what's going on with them. If I'm kind of stuck in my head or I'm not connected to myself at all, we're not going to have a successful lesson. So that's how I found my purpose, how other people can find their purpose as well. And I definitely walk them through the book on how to do that during step one. And then how it plays out in life, in real life, are the things I just mentioned.
Well, I appreciate you breaking that down for us. And, what I love about your work, while there's this highly spiritual aspect to it, you're also very grounded. And you talk about that in step four, you're just grounding your intentions in real life. And so often you see when there's a great deal of spiritual work or a spiritual aspect to work being done, sometimes it can get a little bit so it's not, you don't even feel like you're grounded when you're doing it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, yeah. It's very easy, actually, I think, to inspire people. But how do you help them take action? For me, this is what manifestation is. And alchemy is extremely helpful in doing that because it talks about bringing together skill and magic. If we have only the magical side, only the intuitive, emotional, spiritual side, and no skill, no practical ability, no technique, no learning, we're not going to be able to manifest. And so for me, it's really, really important to not only connect in inspiration with others, but to also connect in skill. So I really appreciate your saying that because I do feel if we only focus on one end of the pole, say only the spiritual pole, or conversely only the practical pole, then we end up with an experience that is not very powerful or effective.
Yeah, and I mean, we're here on this planet, and while we are spiritual beings and having this great experience, I mean, we still have to be grounded.
You're so right. I mean, we're in a physical body. It's a reality, and there's a reason we're here in a body. And I think it's not to ignore it. It's to say, oh, I'm here having a physical experience. And that is not to avoid the physical experience. It's to embrace everything about that physical experience as well. So this is another reason why nature has been so important to me and is spoken about a lot in the book, is because it is a physical reality that manifests so gloriously. And at the same time, it's interesting when people are really in nature, they feel quite spiritual too. So it's a great example, of skill and magic coming together.
Oh my goodness, yes, I know how that is. Well, and so we started our discussion talking about people who take the workshop because they're looking to connect possibly, and maybe they're saying, "Hey, I just don't have a creative bone in my body." How do you see that process going for them?
I mean, I see that all the time. I see people saying that, and I invite them to give it a try, because I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised. I've never met anybody who, after going through this process, said, "Oh, it turns out I'm not creative." Never, ever. I mean, it's just not possible. I think, everybody is creative. Yeah, your creativity will look different than anybody else's, but that's exactly right. As with nature, no plant looks exactly the same. Imagine if they did, that would be awfully strange. I guess there are some experiments trying for that, but even as we clone things, the effect of the environment on them changes them, makes them different. I mean, my partner is an identical twin. So that's very interesting to see, technically they're the same, but they're quite different now.
Oh my gosh. Well, and that's true because while there may be some identical pieces to, a thing, they still have their own way of growth. And so you're going to get different experiences for each one.
Yeah, and I think all are necessary. I think nobody is an accident, and everybody came here for a purpose, and we want to share in that purpose. And I really do believe that bringing out each creative voice is an answer to many of the problems today and many of the hardships and sadnesses today. And each voice, because it's inherently different, adds to this tapestry that we are. So I'm very excited for people to bring out their creativity, and I'm very excited when it looks different than anybody else's.
Yeah. Well, especially now we have people searching for ways to be more creative. I mean, we've got some social distancing happening, people are isolating. And so I think people are kind of striving to find ways to be creative during that time so they don't feel so just kind of, alone.
Yeah, for me, creativity is ultimately about connection. It's about connecting to yourself, connecting to your environment. So now people are very much connected to their houses, connecting to others. And this, even though people are physical distancing, in many ways, people are being more social than ever, online and speaking to their friends and on the phone. And so creativity is a marvelous way to reconnect. And again, I do feel the ultimate aim of creativity. Why do we create? It is to connect. We connect with a thing and put our mark on it and change it forever. And we know that we were there, that we exist, and we affirm life in that way. So I love that people are looking more deliberately to be creative now, because I do believe they will be very happy to find out how much creativity is actually in them. And I think it's also an opportunity for people to realize what is actually in their immediate vicinity that they can be creative with. I'm hearing people doing all kinds of home projects that they've put off for ages, fixing up things in their house, doing feng shui on their house. I'm hearing about people doing all kinds of projects with their children that they haven't had time to do before. People catching up on their reading, organizing their libraries, just noticing the riches that they already have around them, that they don't need to necessarily look outside as much as they may think for their creativity.
If you could have readers and our listeners take away one thing from your book, what would that be?
It would be that everybody is creative and you were born creative, and that you, in fact, must be creative in order to feel fulfilled in life, and that you can do this. You can be creative starting at any age and any time in any circumstance. So that would be my main message.
Well, gosh, Diana, I mean, we could talk for hours.
I'd love to.
You're such a bright light.
Oh,
where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Yeah, the best place is my website, which is my name, dianarowan.com. So just send me a message there and we'll get started.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Such a pleasure, Marianne.
Well, thank you, Diana. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your new book, The Bright Way. The Bright Way is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and of course, it's on Kindle. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, And while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just what moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Friday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.